you're coming in with your own prep and you're going, wait a second, you're throwing all this stuff at me. Just give me a minute to work it out because I've worked on my own logic, as we do. And then you're like, okay, I follow. Yeah, okay, I follow. Okay, cool, let's try. And then you're like, it works so much better.
I want to start again with Joe. We have Tim kind of exposing the younger generation to Monarch at the top of this episode. When he's doing that, how much do you think of it? Like, how much do you think is genuine, and how much is kind of a sales pitch?
I think it's genuine. I think legitimately, like, their grandparents are his heroes, and he was Hiroshi's student. Like, I think he absolutely, like, that in a building or an organization where nobody paid attention to him, Hiroshi like took him under his wing, and like he buys into the family line. I mean, I think in his heart he's like, I wish I was like your brother or your cousin or something like that. Like he absolutely looks up to them. I think he also believes that because they're part of that family, their ability to help unlock some of these mysteries is just like innate in them, because like whatever connections or stuff that they've heard is all going to be helpful. So I don't think it's a sales pitch like it's a used car or anything like that at all. I think he very much is like believes vehemently that like Verdugo is wrong. Like watching all the data, sitting back and watching this thing happen is not proactive, and these kids have relationships and a legacy that could help save lives.
And Elisa, now we all know what happens. Duvall kind of jumps ship and decides to help Lee Shaw. Can you talk about what to you is going through her head when she decides to do that?
It's funny because in a way she jumped ships, but again, I wouldn't have used that expression to say it, because I think it's like it's not so much that she needs a captain and she needs another ship to be on. She's just like trying to follow like the truth, her truth, which is obviously, as we found out, like coming from a very painful place, very personal kind of quest for, not wanting that pain of losing a loved one, like to for anyone. She wouldn't wish it on anyone. And I think she's kind of like, she sort of follows him because she believes that at this very moment he may have the best ideas to kind of like save the world, or save the people.
Do you think her opinion about that changes at the end of the episode when everything kind of falls apart, literally crumbles down around her?
That would be something, I don't know. I don't know at that point what she thinks. She obviously, again, she wouldn't want to, sort of for anybody to be harmed. But as we know from these movies as well, it's like sometimes for the greater good, you're doing something that may have like, difficult consequences or, who knows? That's maybe something we would explore if we were ever to do a season 2, to know like what she actually felt about that and Shaw's ideas, like, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting that like Shaw's idea on paper makes sense. That you just close the holes. The issue obviously being that every time he closes a hole, the pressure elsewhere, he doesn't have that information. And because of the rift between he and Monarch, and because Monarch is so secret and doesn't want to share this information, it's like if they all worked together, then that might be like the thing to do. But I think as the season goes on, these competing ideas, they're all very compelling. And I think that's what's really interesting about it. And again, just a credit to like Chris and Matt Fraction for writing.
In talking to the writers and stuff, like how much knowledge are you given around the world in general? Like, for instance, with Shaw's plan, do you know if does Monarch have another plan? Is there a better option? Are you told anything like that to help with your character?
It's interesting because like it seems like Monarch is playing catch up. Like they're trying to figure out what Lee is doing, but also like there's these radiation, these gamma ray levels have gotten so big that it's like, well, Godzilla's going to attack again. So they're trying to do so many, they're holding so many different plates. Tim has been like, I think consistently like one step ahead of them. Like he's not caught up to Shaw, but he's definitely ahead of Monarch. Like he ends up being right a lot. There's a lot of tension with him and Verdugo of like, if you would just listen to me, like we might be able to fix this. But again, like she's got people to answer to and stuff like that. But as far as like Monarch is trying to contain something, Shaw is trying to finish something, and I think, I don't know, there's probably a version of Tim where he doesn't want the Titans to go away. They're fascinating. They're to be studied. Like it's you know what I mean? It would just be like, we found out there was intelligent life out there, but like, well, we should blow that planet up just in case. You know what I mean? Like we don't want to we don't learn anything. So yeah, I think that's kind of where he is. He's sort of in between the two camps.
There was something that Tim said, earlier in the season in that video call that I kind of mentioned earlier. Like he chastises Monarch for not being, like, I think imaginative or not going for things, and then when he's describing the organization to the kids, he's saying that Bill Randa was into some like tinfoil hat stuff. Like, where do you think his thoughts about all of this are at the end of episode 8?
Yeah, it's like that. They thought these people who signed up to study monsters would be more open-minded, right? Like that. It's like, this is what you do for a living, and everybody's like, I don't know about that. Like, but yeah, I don't know. I think like the tinfoil hat stuff is just like, it's like there's these classified files that Tim would like he's like a encyclopedic knowledge about Monarch, and there's just like stuff that he hasn't read. So it feels like he's got these crazy ideas, but at the same time, I'm sure like all the stuff that Bill Rand is talking about is like probably correct or truth adjacent. You know what I mean? Whatever crazy ideas that the sort of 1950s cast have, they get pretty close to the truth. All these theories. So it's like, I don't know. I think he's like not dismissive of anything. Like, I think it's all to be tested and to be taken seriously until proven otherwise.
And I'm curious maybe for both of your perspectives on this, but it's this big reveal that Shaw says he's been to the Hollow Earth in episode 8, which is kind of presented for the first time in a way in the Godzilla versus Kong film, which takes place after this. Do you have a sense of why that wasn't, like, why the Hollow Earth wasn't known to Monarch in the way that maybe it could have been?
I have no idea.
The answer might be relatively, sometimes some of these things are because there's so many different projects coming out that they try to reserve certain plot lines for certain things. Like, don't take that with a grain of salt, but like sometimes it could just be stuff like that, or Matt Fraction and Chris Black are probably the people to ask those questions to.
Yeah, for sure. And Elisa, I am curious. It seems you get to spend a lot of time with Kurt in the back half of the season. Do you have a favorite moment on set with him, either from this episode or one of the surrounding ones?
I don't know if there's a favorite moment, but I mean, the first time I worked with him was certainly memorable because he was, he's really passionate about kind of elevating the material that we have to being the best it can be. And he's a writer as well. And so he'll come up with loads of suggestions to kind of flesh out the scene. And what was really interesting is that, like, in his way of approaching it, he's making some suggestions, sometimes just inverting lines or adding things that make, from an acting point of view, going from A to B within a scene, like, so much smoother. And I was kind of amazed. And you're coming in with your own prep and you're going, wait a second, you're throwing all this stuff at me. Just give me a minute to work it out, because I've worked on my own logic, as we do. And then you're like, okay, I follow. Yeah, okay, I follow. Okay, cool, let's try. And then you're like, it works so much better. Like, it's amazing. And so I would say every moment I've had those opportunities to sort of like, watch and learn. So yeah, the first time is memorable, but all of those moments were like a gift to me.
Yeah, he's like goes home and works on the stuff. It's not like, I mean, Kurt lived above me while we were on location, and it's like he doesn't just show up and like, all right, what are we doing today? Like he's at home like looking at the scripts and poring over stuff, so like on the day you're ready to go. And like when you have somebody like that is that way, when you're actors like us, then you're like, well, that's how we got to be then. Like he sets that tone.
I love the kind of multi-timeline aspect of the show. And it's so interesting to think that, Anders and Mari have never done a scene with Kate and or Anna, but you two, I feel like, did you have to be extra aware of what was happening in the past storyline? Because I feel like that affects your characters kind of more than anyone else, considering they're within Monarch.
To speak for myself, yes. Like I have to track that because there's a lot of the puzzle that Tim's trying to put together comes from that story. I mean, some of those connections are just like a hole in the wall or something like that. But yeah, I don't know that like all the ins and outs were absolutely necessary, but yeah, just trying to be able to follow their journey is helpful, I think, for Tim, because he's trying to put together the puzzle that they figured out, and Bill Randa's files and stuff like that get lost. Like Tim is just this, that's like his holy grail, and that exists, and now he's trying to put all those pieces back together. So yeah, I think it's like quite helpful for me to follow that storyline.
Yeah, and perhaps less so for Duvall, because obviously that's Tim's thing, to be really into the history. And like we were saying earlier, she has, a lot of respect for him and like what he brings to the work. And I think for her, it's more just about action and just kind of like just going for whatever you need to go for in that moment. So I don't think she would necessarily need like to have all the knowledge of those characters in a sense to kind of exist.
I know we don't know anything about a season 2 or anything like that, but have you each thought about what your characters' futures in Monarch or outside of Monarch might be in a future project?
If we did do a season 2, I think what's interesting about our show is like also how it delves into the human stories and how you get to, know the characters and their motives and their emotions and how being in that world in which they have to survive affects them. And so I'd hope that we get to just know them better as people, and more of their personal stories in a way, I think would be really nice, and more action, obviously. And more monsters.
I'll just say this. Yes, I've thought about it, and no, I'm not going to tell you.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Great to meet you, buddy.
Awesome. You too. Thank you so much.